Good morning, everybody. Welcome. This is a good-looking crowd. My name is Liz Oyer, and I'm the pardon attorney. It's wonderful to see so many of you gathered here today in the Department of Justice to celebrate second chances. I'm not sure why all these seats in the front are empty, so feel free to move up if you're still coming in the door. President Biden has declared April Second Chance Month. The president reminded us that America has always been a land of second chances, founded on fresh starts, new possibilities, and the belief that every person deserves to be treated with dignity and respect. In that spirit, President Biden directed that during Second Chance Month, we recommit to helping people forge new beginnings and building a safer and more just society. That shared commitment is why we are all here today. Our commitment to second chances is year-round, not just in April. An important part of the mission of the Department of Justice is to support second chances through clemency. The department receives and reviews applications for clemency from individuals around the country. Some are incarcerated and seeking commutations of sentence. Others are in the community and seeking pardons to help rebuild their lives. Under the leadership of Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco, the department is committed to ensuring that the clemency process works for all those individuals, families, and communities whose hopes are resting on second chances. As pardon attorney, I've had the opportunity to work closely with Deputy Attorney General Monaco. She is an outstanding leader and partner. She is committed to delivering justice in all its different forms. That includes second chances. Deputy Attorney General Monaco knows that offering second chances strengthens, does not diminish, our system of justice. Under her leadership, clemency is in good hands. I am proud to introduce Deputy Attorney General Monaco as our first speaker.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Liz, for that very generous introduction. It's great to have everyone here. Thank you, especially Liz, to you and your team for all of the incredibly hard work that goes into getting this great hall filled and to putting together what is truly a celebration. Even more importantly, though, I want to thank Liz and her team for the strong and effective leadership that they are showing, that she is showing as our pardon attorney, and that they are showing in the work that they do every day. Your dedication to the clemency review process reflects the Justice Department's commitment to ensuring the opportunity for second chances. I also want to welcome the many guests that we have with us this morning, including one of my predecessors as Deputy Attorney General, David Ogden. My good friend is here. Thank you for being here. And I want to recognize the members of the bench and the bar who are here today, especially those of you from the federal defender community and the public defender community. Your work is vital to the second chances that we celebrate today. And I'm glad to see so many Justice Department officials here, both past and present, and to recognize the critical role that you all play in reviewing and advancing clemency petitions. But most importantly, I am glad to see this great hall filled with so many people who are here to celebrate their incredible second chance stories. Now, clemency and the second chance that it brings removes barriers to successful reentry. It helps individuals start fresh so they can secure employment, safe housing, health care, educational opportunities, and the right to vote. The clemency process can also address outdated enforcement or sentencing policies, including those that would otherwise have a disproportionate impact. And as we mark Second Chance Month, it's the right time to reflect on the promise presented by a new opportunity, a fresh start, and a chance for redemption. The second chance stories represented here today by many of you serve as an inspiration to those of us who work in the criminal justice system. And your stories also serve as an inspiration for those who are still working toward a second chance. At the Justice Department, we're committed to doing all we can to, in the words of President Biden's proclamation marking Second Chance Month, helping people forge the new beginnings they have earned and building a safer, more just society. To do that, and in order to foster more second chances, we are launching a new pilot program, a project that's a collaboration between the Office of Access to Justice and the Bureau of Prisons. It'll provide incarcerated individuals at Bureau of Prisons facilities with no-cost legal support to resolve common civil legal issues that may create barriers to reentry. This initiative will help with some of the most common challenges that individuals face toward a productive reentry to society, like settling family legal matters or managing and resolving debt issues. This project, I think, speaks to the importance of finding ways to support individuals as they rejoin their communities and become productive members and good neighbors. I'm proud of these and other efforts across the department to pursue justice and to help forge new beginnings, especially in the work of the Pardon Attorney's Office and in their thoughtful and compassionate consideration of clemency applications. And finally, a word of thanks to the advocates who work tirelessly and skillfully on behalf of those seeking a second chance. Your efforts are in the finest traditions of the legal profession, and you do a great service to the country through your advocacy. So thank you all for being here this morning. Thank you for sharing your inspiring stories, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the rest of this celebration. So thanks very much for having me.
Thank you, Deputy Attorney General Monaco, for your remarks and for your leadership. It is an honor to have you join us today in celebrating second chances. We are lucky to have with us today another leader of this department who supports second chances. That is Kristen Clarke, our Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. Assistant Attorney General Clarke is a lifelong public servant who began her career as a trial attorney in the same department she now leads. Her entire career has been dedicated to upholding the civil rights of all Americans and to protecting our most vulnerable fellow citizens. Every day, Assistant Attorney General Clarke works to ensure that the reality of equal justice under law lives up to the ideal promised by our Constitution. I am thrilled to have Assistant Attorney General Clarke here today with us to celebrate second chances.
Good morning. Thank you so much for that kind introduction, and thank you for your leadership, your advocacy, and the work that you do every day as our pardon attorney. By some estimates, there are almost 2 million people in federal, state, and tribal prisons and jails, including juvenile correctional facilities and immigration detention facilities at this time. And we know that people of color are disproportionately represented in our nation's prisons and jails. Latinx people are incarcerated at a rate double the rate of white people. Native Americans are incarcerated at rates nearly 4 times that of white people, and Black people are incarcerated at almost 5 times the rate of white people. Because of these stark disparities, clemency is a powerful tool for racial justice and economic justice. Acts of clemency not only acknowledge the disparities and injustices of the past, but allow us to take meaningful steps to rectify them. Executive clemency can address outdated federal criminal policies, particularly those that disproportionately caused harm to communities of color, such as through President Biden's recent full presidential pardon of federal and DC convictions for simple marijuana possession offenses. We must also confront the systemic barriers to people who have criminal convictions or people who have been incarcerated. When someone who has served time reintegrates into their communities, they often experience discrimination in housing, voting, employment, and other areas. A criminal record can prevent someone from landing a steady job, enrolling in the military, having a safe place to live, accessing quality health care, or having the chance to go back to school. It can keep them from ever getting a loan to buy a home, start a business, or build a future. It can bar them from voting. As a result, 3/4 of formerly incarcerated people remain unemployed a year after their release, and joblessness is a top predictor of recidivism. And these issues are frequently compounding for Black and brown people and other people of color. Our work at the Civil Rights Division serves as a complement to the essential work of the Office of the Pardon Attorney. We strive every day to fight back against discrimination and seek to make our criminal legal systems more just and equitable. Just yesterday, for instance, the Civil Rights Division, along with the Office of Justice Programs and the Office for Access to Justice, released a Dear Colleague letter addressing the imposition of fines and fees by state and local courts, including juvenile court systems. This letter outlines the way that low-income people, particularly people of color and youth, are severely impacted by harsh and compounding fines and fees imposed by courts, and encouraged court leaders to take steps necessary to eliminate the use of unnecessary and discriminatory fines and fees. We also seek to vigorously use our federal civil rights laws to address discrimination that occurs at the intersection of the criminal legal system. This past December, we settled a lawsuit with a California city that enacted a so-called crime-free ordinance. And one element of this program required landlords to evict people that had reportedly engaged in, quote, criminal activity on or near the rental property. The program required eviction even if that activity did not result in an arrest or a charge or a conviction. The Civil Rights Division will continue to fight discriminatory and unlawful crime-free ordinances across the country and work to ensure that everyone has fair and equal access to housing. Our federal civil rights laws protect all of us, regardless of whether you've been accused of a crime or served time. Today, we rightly center the voices of those who have received a second chance, the second chance they so rightly deserved. I'm honored to be with all of you today and look forward to hearing and learning from you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Assistant Attorney General Clark, for those remarks. It's wonderful to have you here with us today to celebrate second chances. I'd like to invite some special guests up on the stage now. I think you know who you are. Please come on up, our clemency recipients. In his first 2 years in office, President Biden has used his clemency power in a number of different ways. In April of 2022, he granted 3 pardons and 75 commutations. In December of 2022, he granted 6 more pardons. And on October 6, 2022, he issued a sweeping proclamation pardoning thousands of Americans convicted of simple possession of marijuana. We have several of these clemency recipients here with us today. I'd like to introduce them to you, and I ask you to join me in honoring them. Some of them will be here with us by video, which is why this giant screen is coming down. Some others are here with us in person today. I'm going to wait till our video connection is live, and then I'm going to introduce our clemency recipients to you, and I'm going to ask you to join me in honoring them, but please hold your applause until the end. All right. Good morning, everybody on the video. We have with us on screen, participating by video, Betty Jo Bogans. In 1998, Ms. Bogans was convicted of transporting crack cocaine for her boyfriend. She was a single mother with no prior record. She received a 7-year sentence. Since then, Ms. Bogans has rebuilt her life. She has worked steadily, even during cancer treatment, and she has focused on raising her son. President Biden granted her a pardon on April 26, 2022. Abraham W. Bolden, Sr. Mr. Bolden is a former U.S. Secret Service agent and the first African American to serve on a presidential security detail. In 1964, he was prosecuted for attempting to sell a copy of a Secret Service file. Mr. Bolden fought for nearly 60 years to clear his name. He steadfastly maintained that he was targeted for prosecution because he exposed racism and misconduct within the Secret Service. On April 26, 2022, President Biden granted Mr. Bolden a full pardon. Mr. Bolden has received many honors and awards for his work speaking out against the racism he faced in the Secret Service and for his courage in challenging injustice. Gary Parks Davis. Mr. Davis pleaded guilty to facilitating a cocaine transaction at the age of 22. He completed his sentence in 1981 and went on to earn a bachelor's degree and to start his own landscaping business. He is dedicated to civic work through his local high school booster club, the Rotary Club, and the Chamber of Commerce. President Biden granted him a pardon on December 30, 2022. Vincente Rey Flores. At the age of 19, Sergeant Flores pleaded guilty to using a controlled substance while serving in the Air Force. After completing a rehabilitation program, he was permitted to return to active duty, where he now has earned the rank of Master Sergeant. Sergeant Flores has received numerous awards for his service. He is currently the Inspector General Complaints Resolution Superintendent of Travis Air Force Base in California. President Biden granted him a pardon on December 30, 2022. Dexter Eugene Jackson. In 2002, Mr. Jackson pleaded guilty to using his pool hall to facilitate the sale of marijuana. Since then, Mr. Jackson has converted his business into a cell phone repair shop where he provides job training to local high school students. He also coaches the East Athens Hoyas, a successful 6th grade basketball team. President Biden granted him a pardon on April 26, 2022. Please give all of the honorees joining us by video a round of applause. We have several more special guests here with us in person today, and I'd like to introduce them as well. We have Mr. Christopher Dancy. In 2009, Mr. Dancy was sentenced to 24 years in prison for selling cocaine. In April 2022, President Biden commuted his sentence in light of his exemplary rehabilitation while in prison. He now works in logistics management with his wife, Shamika, who is here with him today. John Dix Knox III. Mr. Knox drove up here all the way from Florida to be with us. In 1996, Mr. Knox pleaded guilty to allowing his premises to be used to grow marijuana. He was sentenced to 6 months community confinement. He now runs a general contracting business and mentors young contractors. He is here today with his son, John Knox IV. President Biden granted him a pardon on December 30, 2022. And last, but certainly not least, I'd like to recognize Beverly Ann Ibn Tomas and her team of advocates. In 1976, Ms. Ibn Tomas was convicted of murder in the second degree for killing her abusive husband. She was 33 years old and pregnant with her second child at the time. Ms. Ibn Tomas's defense attorneys presented the trial court with expert evidence that Ms. Ibn Tomas was suffering from battered woman syndrome. Battered woman syndrome is now a well-recognized psychological trauma that develops in victims of domestic abuse. But at the time, it was a groundbreaking theory, and the trial court refused to allow it. The 2 attorneys who represented Ms. Ibn Tomas throughout her trial and her appeal are here with us today. William McDaniels is senior counsel at Williams & Connolly, and the Honorable Ellen Siegel Huvel started her career at Williams & Connolly. She then served 9 years on the Superior Court for the District of Columbia and 15 years on the U.S. District Court. These two veteran lawyers defended Ms. Ibn Tomas nearly 50 years ago. Their work on her behalf marked one of the first significant steps toward judicial recognition of battered woman syndrome. Ms. Ibn Tomas served a 4-month sentence. She went on to have a long career in nursing, a field in which she still works today at the age of 80. Her daughter, Daria Ibn Tomas, is now an attorney, and she is also here today. President Biden granted Ms. Ibn Tomas a full pardon on December 30, 2022. Please join me in giving this amazing team a round of applause.
Thank you.
All right, well, this screen's going to go up now. Don't be alarmed. And I'd like to invite our panelists up to this stage. Hopefully by now you know who you are. Our 6 panelists, please come on up. We have an outstanding group of speakers joining us today. They have agreed to share their personal stories about second chances, and I'm excited to introduce them to you, but I'm going to give them a moment to take their seats. Hi, Norman. All right. Our first speakers this morning are Norman Brown and David Ogden. In 1993, Norman Brown was sentenced to life in prison for a drug-related offense. His sentence was the result of a mandatory minimum. The judge who sentenced Mr. Brown called the punishment tragically disproportional to the seriousness of the offense. Mr. Brown had served nearly 20 years in prison when he met David Ogden. Mr. Ogden was and is a nationally renowned litigator. He had returned to private practice after serving as Deputy Attorney General from 2009 to 2010. Mr. Ogden took Mr. Brown's clemency case pro bono. In a letter to the pardon attorney, he wrote that it would be a tragedy for Mr. Brown to spend the rest of his life in prison. In July of 2015, Norman Brown became one of the first people to receive a commutation of sentence from President Barack Obama. Since his release from prison, Mr. Brown has become a prolific advocate for second chances. He currently works for the District of Columbia's Department of Youth Rehabilitation Services as a credible messenger. In that role, he helps young men and women avoid the path that led him to prison. Mr. Brown also serves on the board of directors of FAM and as a facilitator of the Free Minds Book Club. Mr. Ogden is chair of the Government and Regulatory Litigation Group at WilmerHale. He has earned every imaginable professional accolade, yet he still says, and these are his words, "Working on Norman's case was one of the most fulfilling projects of my career." Please welcome Norman Brown and David Ogden. You got your mic working okay, Norman?
Mine does.
All right. Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to start with you, Norman. You spent almost 25 years in prison. What kept you positive? How did you stay positive knowing that you might never see the outside of those walls again?
Well, thank you, Liz, and thank you, everyone, for having me today.
One of the things that kept me, and the most important thing that kept me positive, was that I knew that I had made a great mistake in my youth and coming up, involving myself in the selling of narcotics. But after I got in, and when I became to realize the mistake that I made, I immediately hopped on the path of redemption. And one of the best things that kept me going strong was my faith in God. So to grow and to become a man of God and a man of our spirituality, it was what kept me strong. And I thought that if I corrected my life, done better with my life, helped those that were around me, that eventually I would be redeemed and I would be freed. And that's how I kept my sanity.
So did you think that it was the end for you, or did you always believe that you would get to come home someday?
Well, I thought that I would always have a shot with coming back home, because I knew that in the cycle of law, from studying law, that things changes over a 20-year cycle of time. So what I was going to do within that time period was to make sure that when that cycle came around, I would at least be in position by making all of the necessary changes that I need to make with becoming a better person, that hopefully and prayingly that cycle would benefit me.
So David, you play a part in Norman's story of coming home. Can you tell us how you came to represent him, how you first connected with Norman Brown?
Sure, I'd be happy to, and thanks, Liz, for having me participate in this, because it really is the case that, and a shout out to my partner, Kelly Dunbar, who is here and who did a huge amount of the work and deserves a lot of the credit for what we did.
Yes.
And also mention our colleague Jess Leinwand, who can't be here, but who also played a huge role. So I get emails and phone calls from time to time from people hoping for help, and we can't help everybody, and some of them don't make a heck of a lot of sense, to be perfectly honest, when they come in over the transom. But I got an amazing email one day in June of 2012 from a woman who I've never met, but who was a lifelong friend of Norman's, named LaWanda Jones, who sent an email asking, she didn't ask us if we would represent Norman. She asked for information, clues, or guidance as to how she might help him to get the clemency that he deserves. And you know, you asked me the other day when we were chatting about this, sort of what was it about the email that got my attention and made me follow up. And it was beautifully put together. She made, in the space of about 4 paragraphs, kind of all the arguments Kelly and I made at much greater length over time thereafter. But one of the things was that she quoted Judge Nickerson, and you know, you mentioned what he said, and there were numerous times on which this issue was in front of Judge Nickerson, and Judge Nickerson made these comments not only about the tragic disproportionality of the sentence which he was constrained to impose by law, but also Norman had submitted a petition for a reduction of sentence, which the judge was unable to grant, again, for the same reasons. But in that denial, he spoke of Norman's remarkable transformation and the remarkable work that Norman was doing. So we saw this, and Ms. Jones laid this out in her email, and it grabbed me. I had gotten really interested in these issues when I was deputy. I felt there was a lot of work that needed to be done at the department. The president hadn't yet launched his clemency initiative, and I thought, gee, this was a chance to get involved in something that's important on a human level and maybe have a little bit of impact on the direction of policy. So anyway, we looked into it. Kelly did a ton of work to get us up to speed and figure out for sure if all this panned out. It panned out more than I could ever have imagined. This is an extraordinary man, and we realized that, and so we took it on.
I've got one more for you, David, before turning back to Norman. So you worked on his case for 3 years, and he was one of the first individuals to receive clemency under President Obama's initiative. You learned about Mr. Brown's clemency grant before he did, correct?
I did.
Can you tell us about what that was like to
It
get
wa-
that news?
It was just one of the most wonderful days of our lives. The three of us got a call from the Office of Pardon Attorney, and we had been hectoring them for some time. The person said, that the president was going to make an announcement later that day, that Norman was going to be one of the first recipients of the president, and offered me the opportunity to be the one to tell him. And I still sort of choke up thinking about it. So we did, and I mean, Norman has recounted the conversation we had on a number of occasions. It's kind of an amazing story. I might let him tell it.
Yes, I'd
but
like that.
it was a wonderful. It was incredible, and all of us, I think, cherish that experience and that moment.
Norman, can you tell us about that day from your perspective? What was going on before you got that call? What was it like to receive that news? What were the emotions?
Yes, to reflect back on it, I was sitting in my cell one day, and I got a phone call. It was over the loudspeaker, not a phone call, but my unit manager had asked me to come to her office, and the officer was kind of like moving real fast, and before that had taken place, I had lost my mother, my father, my grandmother, and my brother within a sequence of time while I was incarcerated. So once again, I thought that this was another death. Normally, the chaplain would call you if there's a death, but this time it was my unit manager. So I went back, and my unit manager told me this was like 10:30. And she said, I need you to come back here at 11 o'clock prompt because you're going to have a phone call. And I said, well, what is the phone call going to be? And she said, I can't tell you. So right then and there, as you know, I was thinking, is this another death? Because the only one was my sister and my daughter at the time from my immediate family, and I didn't know what kind of blow this could have possibly been. So I said, I went back to my room, I got dressed, and it was like 3 minutes to 11. And the officer came back, and he said, the unit manager would like to see you now. So I come in. When I come in, the unit manager said, have a seat right there. Promptly at 11 o'clock, the phone rang. So when the phone rang, she picked the phone up and she said, yes, he's sitting right here. Would you like for me to put him on speaker? So evidently now I know it was Dave saying, no, hand him the phone. So I still don't know what it is. So I get the phone and I say, hello. Dave said, hey, Norman, how are you? I said, I'm fine. Now, once again, I have been denied on so many different levels of petitions that I thought that this could have been a denial of my clemency. So I got the phone and Dave said, well, how you doing? I said, I'm fine, Mr. Albin. He said, nah, call me Dave. I said, okay, Dave, I'm fine. What's up? And he said, well, we got a response from the Department of Justice. Oh man, my hands started sweating. I said, oh, here we go again. What's my next move? Because I think this is going to be a denial. So we come back, he said, well, I got great news for you. President Obama has accepted your petition. So of course I asked him, Liz, I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, well, Norman, it means that your petition is signed and you'll be getting out November the 10th. I said, November the 10th of what year? And, I needed some clarity. And he said, November the 10th of this year. I said, are you? So I got quiet. And he said, Norman, are you still there? So, of course, I have all kinds of emotions going through my body because this was totally opposite of what I was looking for. So when he told me that my unit manager looked across at me and smiled as if to say, I knew all the time, but I couldn't tell you. And I'm like, ah. So those were the emotions. I went back to my room, sat on the side of my bed. I was all dried up from tears, from crying, when many people that was counting on me from being inside and me keeping them strong, I didn't have any more tears, so I immediately ran to the phone. I called my sister, who was my arch supporter. Then I called my daughter, told her to pull over so she wouldn't crash. So I told her, and that was how my day went when I received that wonderful information.
Norman, can you tell us about the day you left prison? What was that day in November like when you walked out those doors, and what was the first thing you did?
Yes. For one, I couldn't sleep that night because I knew that I was going to be leaving a lot of people that were my support team and my family for the last 25 years. And to be leaving them and for them to know that I was going to be leaving them, that was hard on me. But when I ended up waking up that day, it was so unique and ironic of the role that I played on that compound for 13 years that they delayed the work move so that I could walk to R&D and do all my hugs and all those things from the officers and the staff and all of my comrades that I ended up leaving out and going through R&D. And when you go through the R&D, to be able to actually leave out of there and really be real with leaving, and it's not be a dream, and then to get out and meet my family and hug them in the parking lot. I mean, it was so unreal that even to think about it right now is highly emotional, and it's a day that I can never forget.
Do you feel like sharing the story of where you went next?
Oh, of course. Of course, you may know that after being institutionalized for so long, they had set up me to go eat at a restaurant. And when we got to the restaurant, some of the correctional officers and things that I had built a lot of rapport with had set this up for me along with my family. So I'm going through the line, and the restaurant that we went to, you can tell them what you want as you go through the line. Now, I'm not used to that. You eat what's on your plate, and you get out of here. So I'm in the restaurant, and I get up there, and they ask me, how did I want my eggs? I said, huh? Well, did you like pancakes and sauce? I mean, pancakes and or French toast? And I'm like, I get to choose that? And everybody joking me and playing, and like, man, you can choose that, man. You ain't locked up no more. And I'm like, wow, well, it's easy for you to say. But my transition came at the twinkling of an eye. And I couldn't prepare for this, and I was institutionalized. And then I had a chance to sit down with my family, with my loved ones, and with correctional officers that I have been working with for the last 13 years. And then after I left there, I got in the car on the way home to Washington, D.C. to the halfway house, and I got car sick. So I got car sick. They had to pull over. I had to relieve myself of all that good breakfast. And then I ended up getting to the halfway house, and the streets was full of people welcoming me home, and I didn't know how they knew I was coming home. And I got in the halfway house, and the lady at the halfway house that was having me to check in said, "Who are you?" And I told her who I was, and they said, "Why are so many people out here?" And I didn't have an answer for them, Liz. So that was my journey on my way home.
That's great, Norman.
I said I didn't realize about his losing his breakfast. He told me that was a secret, so I guess...
Norman, I've got one more for you, and then I'm going to turn it back to David. I know it hasn't all been easy since you came home. Can you talk a little bit about some of the challenges of returning to your community after 25 years away?
Yes. Just the fact of coming home and seeing Washington, D.C. after 25 years was overwhelming. The new structures, the fact that my neighborhood was gone, not knowing how to utilize anything from the subway to the telephone to the computer to learning how to grocery shop, adjusting to prices that when you were used to having a prison economy to coming out here and one swipe or one shop and one aisle of a grocery store is your whole entire check in prison. And me trying to adjust my psyche to that, how was I going to manage the fact of having a relationship with my mate and sharing that space with her, having a job, getting up and learning how to properly present myself. All of these things were such a challenge, and there are still challenges now that we have to go through. And for me to look out in this audience and see all of the wonderful people that helped me stage after stage after stage of my transition is such a wonderful thing. This is like a reunion to me, and they helped me stage after stage and to let me know, just take your time and it will be better. And I'm on my 8th year home, and we still have some challenges that we have to try to continue to overcome. And I gave myself a 10-year window before I would be comfortable enough to do other things that I want to do in life. So the challenges are there, but it's more up for the good than down for the bad, and I'm really enjoying my life.
Thanks, Norman, for sharing that. So, David, you've said, I mean, you've had an amazing career, and yet you say that working on Norman's case was a highlight of your career. What does it mean to you to be sitting here with him today on a stage in the Department of Justice?
It's hard to describe. I look back, it was great to be preparing for this event because it gave me the occasion to go back with Kelly's help, because I can never find anything, to come up with the history, all the emails, all the papers that we filed. And one of the things was that morning of the 13th of July of 15, the exchange of emails, and they were just one-liners between Jess and Kelly and me, where she said it was an indescribable feeling. And I said it was an extraordinary feeling, and Kelly said it was the most meaningful victory of his career. Of course, he was quite young at the time, but it was. It also is, I think, the most meaningful thing that I've done in a way, and I think that's because not just because of the lawyering that went into it, and we did a good job, but we were very lucky in our client. We had good facts, which was very important. There are a lot of very deserving people. Norman was extraordinarily so. But we had gotten to know him, you know, we were friends at that point. There were a lot of phone calls. There were a lot of collaboration. Norman was a good advocate in his own behalf, and we got to know his family. We got to know the people who cared about him in prison and who admired him. And so it was personal at a level. And so then, you know, to have it pay off and to have this sort of sense that justice was going to get done when it had been such an unjust road to that point, and a vindication of our friend. So it was still extraordinary experience.
Norman, I'm going to give you the last word. Is there ever a day when you wake up? I mean, you've been home for over 7 years now?
Yes.
Is there ever a day when you wake up and think about what could be, where you could be if not for clemency?
Oh, absolutely. Oftentimes when I have conversations with a lot of brothers and sisters that have come home, it's just the fact that, just to think that if clemency hadn't afforded me a second chance at life, how much things like clemency and pardons and the different laws that allow us to become free and allow us to be able to share our talents that we have. And there are many people that are still incarcerated with these same kind of talents that society is robbed of, if not given a second chance. And I'm so honored and so grateful for the different laws and the different people that continually fight to keep these second chances available for us, because there's a point in the time that a fruit hangs on a tree. And when that fruit hangs on that tree, there's a time when they're ripe, and they're ripe for picking. And if that fruit stays on that tree too long, the next stage to that fruit, it goes rotten. And that's the same stages of our redemption and the process that we as human beings go through after we make mistakes. So we would hope and pray that you all that are continually fighting for the laws to come in effect, to pull ripe fruit out of those prisons, to give them a chance to come out here and help a society that needs our help. That if you don't continue to fight for all of those that are in there that have put themselves in positions of redemption to come out, then we lose valuable talents. And they will be stuck in there, and it will make our job even harder as we move forward in society. So clemency is a wonderful piece for second chance, and I thank all of the judges, the lawyers, and all of the organizations for helping putting people like myself and people like you who believe in us, and all of our attorneys and the judges. Thank you so much for giving us an opportunity, and all those that fight every day and every night to free us up, and all of the brothers and sisters that are continually making a pathway for those of us to be proud and to not close doors on people that deserve a second chance.
Thank you, Norman. Norman and David, thank you. Thank you for sharing your stories. All right, good morning. I want to bring Danielle Metz and Kenneth Polite into this conversation. Your mic working okay? Yep.
Is it on?
Yep, it's on. In 1993, Danielle Metz was sentenced to life imprisonment in New Orleans, Louisiana, for a drug conspiracy led by her former husband. This was her first offense. She was 26 years old and the mother of 2 young children. The same year, just a few miles away, Kenneth Polite Jr. graduated as valedictorian of his high school, De La Salle High School in New Orleans. Mr. Polite was raised in the lower Ninth Ward and attended school on a scholarship. He went on to Harvard University and Georgetown Law School. He worked at a New York law firm and became an assistant United States attorney. In 2013, Mr. Polite returned to New Orleans as U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Louisiana. In that role, he committed to being what he called a community problem solver and not just a prosecutor. This was a turning point for Ms. Metz. She was lucky to have a formidable group of advocates in her corner, including Andrea James, who's present here today. They saw an opportunity and they sought Mr. Polite's support for clemency. In April of 2015, Mr. Polite wrote a letter to the pardon attorney in support of Ms. Metz's clemency application. He wrote, "Ms. Metz has now spent almost half her life in prison, and we do not believe that she merits spending the rest of her life in prison. Nor do we believe that she poses any meaningful risk to public safety. Accordingly, my office supports granting Ms. Metz's application for a commutation of sentence." In August of 2016, President Obama did just that. Ms. Metz has now returned to New Orleans, where she has served her community as a healthcare worker, a violence interrupter, and an advocate and mentor for young women and girls. At age 50, Ms. Metz enrolled in college. She made the Dean's List her first semester and has earned an associate's degree, and she will earn her bachelor's degree in social work later this year. Ms. Metz currently works as Director of Clemency for the National Council of Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. And Mr. Polite, he's done okay for himself too. He is currently the Assistant Attorney General for the Criminal Division, where he leads the Department of Justice in tackling challenges across the country as a community problem solver. Please welcome Danielle Metz and Kenneth Polite. Danielle, I'd like to start with you. You were in prison for more than 23 years, separated from your family and your young children. Can you talk to us about what motivated you and what kept you hopeful during that time?
Well, what motivated me was the fact that I had 2 young kids who I left at the age of 3 and 7. And my sister, who's in the audience, who fought, she's my warrior, she's my hero. She fought for me like no other. My mother.
And she's here today.
Yes, my sister is here, my niece is here today. And so many advocates just all across the nation that kept on fighting for me and telling me that I can make it. And of course, I wanted to get back to my mom, and one of my fears was that I would have to bury my mom while I was in prison, because so many of the women who were in prison passed and didn't even make it to this point. So that was hard for me, and it was very, I was traumatized just being there, you know, every day, calendar after calendar, year after year. But when I saw President Obama, I always remember he would say, hope, hope, hope. And that's what I ran with. And whenever I was getting down, my sister would say, girl, where there's life, there's hope. So you just keep on. And of course, my mother told me just the faith of a mustard seed. And she gave me this little piece of tissue. I have it at my house right now. It's a little brown piece of paper in the visiting room. And I always keep that. And that's what she told me. That's all it takes.
Kenneth, can you tell us about how you became aware of Danielle's story and why you decided to go out on a limb for her and write that letter to President Obama?
Thank you so much, Liz. And I just want to echo the words of our Assistant Attorney General, Kristen Clark. We are blessed to have you in the Department of Justice.
Thanks.
Yeah.
You've already highlighted some of the tremendous advocates that were in this young woman's corner. And the first time I heard a little bit about her narrative came through the voices of those advocates. But we didn't stop there, and I'm glad we didn't. That process for us, as you could imagine, comes with some skepticism from a prosecutorial office. And so we start testing, we try to talk to people. And to a man and woman, whether we talk to someone who was with the Bureau of Prisons, who wrote letter after letter after letter commending this young woman on all the work she had done while she was behind bars to turn around her own life, to change the life of her fellow inmates. Whether we talk to the former prosecutors themselves and their support for her commutation, and whether we talk to family members and members of her community that were standing in her corner, we knew that this was someone who was ready to return back to our community. And I say our community because, as you talked about in your introduction, in hearing her story, it became very personal for me. I could see a family member. My mother, like Danielle, was a teenage mother. We came from the same community in New Orleans. But for the grace of God, go I. So for me, this was an easy choice. We talk about the role that lawyers can play and the Department of Justice can play, but the only way that we ultimately make a difference in terms of the lives of people who are returning back to our communities are not through my voice. People who have walked that walk need to be the advocates out front, and that's the reason why I needed her back out into our community.
Well, I think she's proven you right.
Yes, she has.
Danielle, what did it mean to you and what does it mean to you today that Mr. Polite supported your application for clemency?
Well, after God, Mr. Polite is my hero. He really is, because it took a lot of bravery for him to go out and write that letter. That's a courageous stand that he made to say, I'm going to put my signature on this young woman's letter, and I'm going to let her go, and I'm going to let her fly and see how high she's going to go. And that took a lot, because I know in the area of work that he's in, you know, your colleagues don't approve of this type of thing. And that's just what it is. And he just said, I'm going to do it. And it meant the world to me, and I just thank him for that he took a chance on me, and that he believed in me, and he still believes in me, and that he did it, you know, because you can tell he's a leader. He's a leader. And he wanted to write something that he, in his heart, knew it was wrong to begin with. For me to get sentenced to 3 life sentences plus 20 years, that's just what's wrong. And I guess he said, I'm going to right this wrong. And that's what he did. And it meant the world to me.
So, Danielle, you hit the ground running, and you have accomplished a lot since you've been home. I think I listed you as 4 or 5 different professions that you're working on.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what's your proudest accomplishment in the time that you've been home?
My proudest accomplishment is to be a grandmother. I have 2 young grandkids. One name is Victory, and my other one name is Mercy. And my son and my daughter, Carl and Glenisha. And to be able to amplify the voices, to be in this space even today, to amplify the voices of the women that are left behind, that are still there, that we're fighting for, and we're struggling to pull out, that my voice could be heard for them. And I'm proud about that, because I could be doing anything else, but it's because I cannot have sat in a room or somewhere with somebody 20-something years and just say, I'm just going on, because it's just too hard. Because those in this audience that you see, Amy, my sister, some other ones, they fought for me. Amy walked around the White House with one picture of me. She told me she was going to do that. And I have that picture, and she did what she said she was going to do. And so I know now I'm in a position, and when I talk to the women that I advocate for, so I say, now you got to come out here and do this work. I said, because this hard work. They said, we're going to do it, you know, but it remains to be seen. They're still doing it. And of course, Andrea James, you know, she's my mentor, and I love her. I love her. She has a beautiful heart. And Miss Alice Johnson, I call her from time to time. And when I'm having a hard time, she say, girl, get that warrior in you and get that stuff done. That's what it is.
So, Kenneth, it was about 8 years ago that you wrote that letter for Danielle, and she's proven that you were right to take that chance on her.
Yes, indeed.
What does it mean to you to be sitting next to her today on a stage in the Department of Justice?
She is the living embodiment of justice achieved for me. You know, look, for us, for people from New Orleans and from Louisiana, you have to appreciate how close a community is. I come from a family of law enforcement. My father is a police officer, 37 years. My brother's a detective in Houston right now. I've walked the halls and aisles of police precincts. I've been in many prisons to visit him, as well as to visit family members that were locked up in some of those places. This is not that far away for us. We are the incarceration capital of the world, a place that incarcerates more of its citizens than any state in this country. And yet we remain one of the most violent states in this nation. When we rely exclusively on locking people away, we see that it is failing us. It is failing our communities. Throwing away our people in these prisons, and when the 90 to 95% of them return back to our communities, they are faced with hurdle after hurdle after hurdle. The very first speech I gave when I became U.S. Attorney was to our business community, who always came to me and asked, what can we do to fight violence in these streets? What can we do? The answer was simple. Hire someone who has been behind bars. Hire someone who is returning back to our communities. Stop putting hurdles in front of them. And so for me, this issue of reentry was so deeply personal that when I had the opportunity, not just on a programmatic level to make a difference and advocate for reentry, but to directly affect the life of someone and give that person an opportunity, that second chance, and give myself and give our community another ally in this fight. It made all the difference to me. It makes all the difference to the city of New Orleans. She is a shining star in our community, and I look forward to all that she will accomplish for us.
Danielle, I'm going to give you the last word, and I'm going to ask you the same question I asked Norman. Is there ever a time that you think about how different your life could be today if not for Mr. Polite and President Obama and all of the advocates in your corner and everything that you did to put yourself in that position to get clemency?
Yes, because if I hadn't got this opportunity, and even when I got sentenced, you know, the judge told me I had forfeited my right to live in a civilized society. In that moment, I felt like I had been dropped in a pit that I could never come up from. So if I had never got this second chance, as he said, I'm a shining star, I wouldn't have never been able to shine beyond the bars. Because even when I was in prison, Amy always said, everybody on the compound loved Danny. And I made sure that while I was in there, that if I never got out, it would never be for something I had done. Because I was going to walk the walk and I was going to do everything right to make sure I had this opportunity. And if it had not been for the Clemency Initiative, I wouldn't be here. And as you know, it's very powerful. And that it changed lives. And we need more of that. We need more of that, like Ms. Catherine fight relentlessly for these women that are incarcerated. And, you know, when I go back many times, Amy, I would call Amy, she said, we just said your name. And as long as they knew that I was alive, that they were still saying my name, that it was an opportunity. So if I had never gotten that chance, I wouldn't be sitting here today. It's almost like a dream to me. Like, sometimes I'm really quiet sometimes, but I'm like, am I really in this room? Am I really in this room with Mr. Polite? He does everything to me. He's just everything to me. He's like, in our community, look, he come from New Orleans. I come from New Orleans. His assistant come from New Orleans. It's us in the community that makes the community.
Thank you. Danielle and Kenneth, thank you so much for sharing
Thank
your
you, Liz.
personal stories
Thank
with
you.
us today. Sorry that not as many people wanted your photo, Norman. All right, last but definitely not least, we've got Judge Alexander Williams and Evans Ray Jr. And I'd like to bring them into our discussion. In May of 2007, Evans Ray Jr. was sentenced in Maryland to life imprisonment for selling 60 grams of crack cocaine. Judge Alexander Williams imposed that sentence. Judge Williams did not want to impose that sentence. He called it cruel and unusual punishment. But his hands were tied by a mandatory minimum. Mr. Ray never gave up hope that he would come home one day. In September of 2015, he applied for clemency. In his application, he stated that selling drugs was the biggest regret of his life. He wrote, "Not only did I break the law, but I've caused so many family members that I love and who have always loved me unconditionally to do jail time mentally, even though they have never been incarcerated a day in their lives." Judge Williams supported Mr. Ray's clemency application. In a letter to President Obama, Judge Williams wrote, "Since Mr. Ray received the life sentence, the laws have changed, public perceptions have changed, charging policies have changed, even the sentencing guidelines have changed. These changes happen because people have come to realize the harm that harsh mandatory minimums inflict on communities, especially low-income neighborhoods like the one in which Mr. Ray lived and worked." Judge Williams asked the president to grant clemency so that the wrong in Mr. Ray's case can finally be righted. In August of 2016, the president commuted Evans Ray's sentence. Mr. Ray now works at the District of Columbia Department of Parks and Recreation. In the summers, he facilitates Camp Riverview, an overnight camp on the Chesapeake Bay that gives city youth an opportunity to experience nature. Judge Williams has retired from the bench. He now directs the Center for Education, Justice, and Ethics at the University of Maryland. Judge Williams and Mr. Ray have become friends and collaborators. They have joined forces many times as advocates for second chances. Please welcome Evans Ray Jr. and the Honorable Alexander Williams Jr. Mr. Ray, I'm going to start with you.
Why am I nervous?
Mr. Ray, can you talk to us about what it felt like to hear Judge Williams say life imprisonment and what kept you going after that?
To hear Judge Williams say that his hands were tied, that he had no other choice but to sentence me to life plus 10 years in the federal penitentiary for 60 grams of crack cocaine. It was such a good feeling for me just to hear that the judge had my back. And he's one of a lot of other judges that want to be able to make a change for guys and women like myself and others that have been up here, and their hands are tied. Judge Williams wasn't going for anything, y'all. He told the prosecutor that, "I can't give this man life. That's cruel and unusual punishment." He said, "But what I am going to do is I'm going to sentence him to 27 or 26 years. It was 360 months. And I got to add that up in my head. That was 30 years. But it was better than an elbow, which we call a letter, a L. If I would have had the privilege of getting, and it would have been a privilege, the 30 years that the judge had sentenced me to, I would have been eligible for, they had second chance for crack. They had the crack laws that changed. Because I didn't have a number, I had a letter, I wasn't eligible for any of that. The 2-point reduction, all that adds up when you're doing time. When I saw my counselor and I tell them, they looked at my compensation sheet, it didn't say life, it said 500 years. This man right here sent me to Supermax in Baltimore. I knew I was on my way to prison. I woke up that morning from the guy knocking on the door, said, "You're going back to Greenbelt." When I went back to Greenbelt, that's when the judge said those words, "My hands are tied. I have to give you life. But for the Court of Appeals, I want to put something on the record." And man, he shut it down. He shut it down. And they made me laugh because I talk a lot. Well, I'm going to be quiet for a minute.
Judge Williams, can you tell us about that from your perspective? I know it weighed on you to sentence Mr. Ray to life imprisonment. What was it like for you as a judge and as a person to have to do that?
Yes, thank you. And I want to let everyone know I'm not a flaming liberal. And I was a former prosecutor as well as a public defender. But this sentence just did not sit well with me. I had 6,000 civil cases and 1,000 criminal cases in my career, but this one case really bothered me tremendously. The enhancements and the sentencing guidelines, again, removed any discretion I had to look at the entire case. I want all of you all to certainly understand this was a close case to start with. It was a mistrial. And then, again, most of the other defendants worked out pleas and they got far less sentence. This man's role was so minor. He actually was approached by an undercover law enforcement, working for law enforcement, and they asked him to get him some crack. Not cocaine, but crack. And we know why sometimes people ask for crack, because there's a higher sentence. And so I was suspicious all along about that. But at any rate, he refused first time to do it, but then he relented and used poor judgment and so forth. But all the other defendants that worked out guilty pleas, they got minor sentences. And this man, because he had 2 brushes with the law as a youngster with 2 previous offenses, I had to give him life. Natural life, meaning no parole in the federal system, no parole. I didn't like that. And so I gave him 27 to 30 years first, hoping that the Justice Department would be satisfied with that, but they were not. And they appealed the case to the United States Court of Appeals for the 4th Judicial Circuit. They reversed me and said, "Williams, you don't have the authority to give anything less than life." And so it came back, and I had to re-sentence him to life, but I put on the record my displeasure with what I had to do. And before I shut up, I want to give a shout out to the Federal Public Defender's Office for Maryland. Jim Wider is here, Lauren Case, and other staff members. They were aggressive in taking this unique case, again, to make sure that the ultimate relief for clemency took place. But it was an amazing case. I'm so happy for this man. And, you know, judges are supposed to be very, very independent and take no sides. But I'm going to tell you all now, I was rooting for this man to get an acquittal. I was secretly rooting. But he eventually got his relief.
So, Mr. Ray, I know that you never gave up hope that you were coming home someday. Can you talk to us about what that was like for you, what the clemency process was like for you, what that process of trying to get out from under that life sentence was like for you?
Life plus 10 years, locked in a little cell with a metal toilet and a metal sink, 2 bunk beds, sometimes 3. When you say cruel and unusual, that's what that was, cruel and unusual. To get up under it, I had to program. I had to change my way of thinking. In some programs, NA and AA that I taught in prison, they call it stinking thinking. and I had to change that. I try to be 100% real with everything that I say and do. So I started programming. I started a group called Men with Goals. I did not divert from who could come in this class, because I don't see color, I see human beings. And there was a lot of good men that were incarcerated with sentences like mine. I started 2 programs. I wrote letters. I wrote Obama in June. One day, a big old yellow envelope came in the mail in July, and it was from the White House. So the officer was like, Evans Ray, you got a letter from the White House. What they writing you for? I said, because I wrote them. I opened the letter up, and just so you will know out here what I said to Obama, I said, I appreciate everything that you and your wife have been doing for the men and women of color in our city, which is Washington, D.C., and around the world. I said, I'm not here to talk about anything but one thing. I appreciate the work and the love that you're showing all walks of life. When I got that letter back in July, and that man thanked me so hard that I didn't think it was Obama. But it was. And the last thing I remember in the letter, it said, Godspeed. And I was like, what does this mean? And he only wanted the best for me. Him and his wife signed the letter, and I was like the officer then, what they writing me for? But it was a letter that took me to make me keep on striving, to keep programming, keep doing things for the men and women in prison until I get my hind parts out here and I can put the footwork down that's supposed to be put down.
So, Mr. Ray, can you tell us about the day that you learned that you received clemency?
Yes, I can. I was like, they do a 4 o'clock, they got these certain counts. One of them, the main count is a 4 o'clock count, where everybody on the compound that's incarcerated has to be in your cell. I'm in my cell, I'm laying in the bunk, the 4 o'clock count go around, but then my case manager knocked on the door. So I came to the little window, it was only a little square window. She was like, I need to see you in my office after count. And I said, yes, ma'am. Got up, brushed my teeth. Said, God, what's going on? Did somebody die? And when y'all heard Norman say what he said, that's the first thing that comes to our mind when you get that call or that letter saying that you got to come to the counselor's office or the chaplain. So I went to the office, I sat down, and we sitting there in the telephone right there, and she's holding just a little conversation with me. But I'm like, what's going on? Something happened? And she was like, everything's all right. Well, in '93, I lost my sister coming to visit me in prison. Her truck turned over, she died instantly. So my first thought was, something's wrong. Well, my counselor, my case manager not looking like something wrong. The phone ring, it's a man. She give me the phone, and I was like, hello? He was like, you Mr. Ray? I said, yes, sir. I said, who are you? I believe he said Tom something. He said, you got life plus 10 years? I said, yes, sir. Why? He said, you don't have life plus 10 years no more. He said, you going home. And I said, what? He said, sir, you going home. I got even quieter. He said, you still there? I said, you really talking to me? I'm going home? He said, you're going home. And I told him, I said, I can't believe this. So we get off the phone. Now, in the pods, you got what same thing that's up here, 60 men upstairs, 60 down. I'm going back, all the men standing out there, because everybody kind of respected me a little. They say, when you get the good news, you going home? I said, nah, man, that was something else. I go in my cell, I put the validation up, that's a towel that goes over the window. And I got down on my knees, and I cried out to God, thanking him, because I'm about to go home. I don't want anything to go wrong, y'all. I don't even want to go on the yard for the next count. I want to stay right here. So I come out after I pray, I move to validation, I come out, now everybody looking at me like maybe somebody died in this family. I said, yes, I got it. And everybody clapped and hollered and yelled. They want my tennis shoes, they want my groceries. And it was just a lovely feeling, and it's a feeling that brought tears to my eyes in front of 120 men. But they were tears of joy. And I know I'm about to see my mother and my grandma and my kids. And we'll get back to that one.
Well, let's get to that right now. What was it like when you actually walked out of that prison? What was it like coming home to your family? Tell us about what you did and what it was like returning to your community.
I can remember that day like it was yesterday. They knocked. I couldn't sleep. I don't know how Norman went to sleep, but Mr. Ray couldn't sleep. I had already been in 12 years and some change, and now I'm getting ready to go home. So 6 o'clock breakfast come, I ain't going no breakfast. I don't want to be walking down the pod and somebody get stabbed or a fight break out and my face on that camera, no. So I stayed in there, ate some oatmeal that morning, didn't have an appetite. Okay, 8:30 come around, it's time for work call move. Instead of work call move, they have a noise that happens when trouble happens on a compound. It goes boo-doo, boo-doo, boo-doo. That means everybody got to get on the ground and lay down. It's either a fight or a stabbing. In my case that day, that morning, it was a stabbing. Put me back in the cell, and I had to wait some more. They cleared the compound for Norman for good reasons. They cleared it for me because the drama was over. They took me to R&D. I used to wear an outfit back then called Shooter Sports. Robert got a beautiful store and beautiful clothes, and that's what my nephew and my best friend brought me. I didn't want to ride the bus. Got my big sweatsuit on, got my tennis shoes on, my sweatsuit big like they used to wear 12 years ago. They're not wearing that no more. Everything is tight now. But I felt good, and I looked back, and it was something that I always remember. In that rearview mirror, everything gets small, 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 and then it's gone. And that's why I'm here with you guys now. They get me into the city, which is Washington, D.C. again, 1282 Oak Street Northeast. That's where I was raised at, and my grandmother was still alive. We're talking about a woman that was 90-something, still coming to the prison to see me. Her cane, if it's a piece of trash on the floor, she gonna pick it up. If your son hair not right, she gonna straighten it up. She was just that matriarch. She's that woman. I walked up her steps, and she was bedridden then. And I remember coming up the steps, and her beautiful rose bushes were not as pretty as they were when she could move like she wanted to. And the front door was open, and she was in a hospital bed in the den. And I came up the steps. I said, "Mama, Mama." And she said, "Is that my baby?" I said, "That's me, Mama." She said, "Is that Chucky?" I said, "It's me, Mom," and I cried 12 years of tears to hug her. That same old lady scent on her, because she wouldn't wear but one perfume, and they didn't even sell that anymore. To see her, that was the first person I saw. From there, we went to Accokeek, Maryland, to my mom, who's back there, looking beautiful. When they talk about warriors that pray, that's one of them. And she used to tell me, "Boy, you got prayers coming from people at 90 years old, 100 years old." I said, "Mom, they ain't gonna get me out of here." And she said, "You just wait and see." She said, "Because your mother haven't claimed this." She said, "You're coming home." And after I saw her and this little young man back here, can you raise your hand, son? That's my namesake, y'all. That little man was 3 years old when I left. He was asleep when they ran in the house. They carried him and his sister out and put him in my mother's arms. He never woke up and saw his father, his mother, or his sister in handcuffs that morning. Never woke up, him or his sister. And you tell me God ain't good? Because that's something he would have never forgot. Anytime they remember them 50 Cent songs back then in the 2000s, he can remember back then music I used to play taking him to the babysitter. And I knew he wouldn't have forgot what happened to me and see his mom in handcuffs, his oldest sister in handcuffs, and his dad. But that prayer woman right there carried him and my daughter up out of there. The last thing they let me do, I think I had about $100 in my pocket. I said, can I get this to my mother so she can get the kids something to eat? And the officer said, sure you can. And that's my story.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Ray. Judge Williams, I'm gonna give you the last word. Can you tell us about how you forged this friendship with Mr. Ray? I know you've even had him introduce you at events where you've been speaking. How did that relationship develop between the two of you?
Yeah, as I mentioned, this was such a unique case, and my hands were tied. I was not able to look at the mitigating circumstances, the uniqueness of who he was, to factor that in the sentencing. And so I just remembered this case so much, it haunted me a long time. And I think that I grew up in Washington, D.C., just the way you did, portions of your life. And we struck a bond when the federal public defenders came to me and asked me, Judge, will you write the letter, assist in the petition for clemency? I said, certainly. That's one case that I remember so long. And when he finally was released, we met in my attorney's office in Baltimore, and I also had him come and talk to my class. I teach a law class in criminal procedure at Howard Law School, and he came and talked to my 50 students on criminal procedure and sentencing. And half the class just broke down crying when they heard his story. But I left the bench in 2014. I loved it, but I wanted to get back out here and do something based on my experience. And I opened up my policy center, the Judge Alexander Williams Jr. Center. Right there. And we deal with social justice, criminal justice reform, and Evans and I, we go around and we talk about trying to eliminate, again, mandatory sentences and enhancements that really pretty much impose too harsh sentences from time to time on people. And so we maintain a relationship, love him, love his family, and we communicate quite often. So I'm just pleased to be here, and I thank the department for putting together this wonderful program. This is so important, so important.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here today. Yes, okay. I know you had to have the last word, Mr. Ray.
I
Okay,
want to have
go
the
ahead.
last word because I done got myself in the doghouse. My wife right here. I want to be able to go home and sleep comfortably tonight. I don't want the covers on her and not on me. So, Deshaun Martino Ray, I appreciate you marrying me. I have the attorney that fought hard for me in the back, Miss Sapna Merchant Handler. As Liz said, I work Department of Park and Recreation. I have Jennifer and Diamond McLean in the back. Those are my managers at my job. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Thank you, Judge.
This is going to be one of the best sellers. Don't miss this one. Thank you.
thank you to all of our panelists for sharing their stories with us. I also want to note that, like 10 of my colleagues told me not to bring my pink binder up on stage, and I forgot. So apologies to everyone in the Office of the Pardon Attorney. Clemency has a long history and tradition in this country. It has been used by every president to grant second chances. It's written into our Constitution. I want to take a moment to honor everyone in this room who has benefited from clemency. And we've got quite a few people other than our panelists who are here today who have been directly affected by receiving clemency and who've advocated on behalf of others for clemency. And I want to acknowledge those people. We have two very special people here today whose lives were changed by clemency more than 20 years ago. I'd like to ask Amy Ralston-Pova, who's taking my picture right now, and Kemba Smith-Pradia to please stand. In 2000, President Bill Clinton commuted the prison sentences of Ms. Pova and Ms. Smith. Both were serving lengthy sentences for drug-related offenses. Each of these women has spent the last 2 decades laying the groundwork for other incarcerated women and men to receive second chances. Ms. Pova is the director of the Can Do Foundation, and in 2021, she also received a full pardon. Ms. Smith is president of the Kemba Smith Foundation, a co-convener of the Justice Roundtable, and served on the Virginia Parole Board. Let's give them both a round of applause. From 2009 to 2017, President Barack Obama commuted the sentences of 1,715 people. We are proud to have some of those people here today, and I'd like to ask them to stand when I introduce them. Please hold your applause until I've introduced everyone. Charles Harrison owns a trucking company in North Carolina. He has also trademarked a line of baked goods. He's here today with his family. Jason Hernandez is a clemency and justice advocate. He recently founded La Tiendita, a nonprofit grocery store that provides healthy, affordable food to an underserved community in Texas. Ernest Glover works for the District of Columbia Department of Public Works. He also serves on the board of the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. Byron McDade works as a crane operator for WB Waste Solutions and lives with his wife in Maryland. She's here today as well. Mr. McDade's clemency petition was supported by Judge Paul Friedman of the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia, who is also here today. Judge Friedman, would you please stand? Cornelius Porter works for Walmart, attends barber school, and plays in a bowling league with his brothers in Maryland. Dexter Tyson works for Cisco as a CDL driver in Maryland. And could I ask all of you to please stand one more time? I think some of you sat back down. These men are living proof of the power of second chances. Please give them a hand. From 2017 to 2021, President Trump granted 238 pardons and commutations. Some of those recipients are here today, and I'd like to ask them to stand when I introduce them. Again, please hold your applause. Is Weldon here? No? All right. Alice Marie Johnson is an accomplished advocate for clemency and criminal justice reform. She is CEO of the nonprofit Taking Action for Good. Shaylana McFarland is a justice reform advocate. She serves on advisory boards for multiple nonprofit organizations in Georgia. David Safavian is general counsel for the American Conservative Union and director of its Nolan Center for Justice. Topeka Sam, is Topeka here? Okay, is not here. Each one of these individuals has used their own personal experience to become a powerful advocate for second chances on behalf of others. I am proud to have them here today. Let's give them a round of applause. We have some friends here today who have received second chances through avenues other than clemency, and I want to recognize them as well. Gwen Levi, would you please stand? Ms. Levi is a grandmother who is home with her family today because of compassionate release. She recently testified before the U.S. Sentencing Commission in support of second chances. Tony Lewis Sr., would you please stand? Mr. Lewis is a grandfather who came home in March under Section 404 of the First Step Act. He served 34 years in prison. His son, Tony Jr., was by his side the whole time and is also here today. Tony, would you please stand as well? I know there are a lot of people in this room and in the District of Columbia who are very happy to have Mr. Lewis home today. Thank you for being here with us today. I also want to recognize some special guests who have received second chances under the District of Columbia's Second Look laws. Please stand when I say your name, and again, hold your applause until the end. Troy Berner is an associate with the Justice Policy Institute. He received a sentence reduction in 2018 and was later exonerated in 2020. Coley Long is a program associate at Georgetown University's Prisons and Justice Initiative, supporting returning citizens and incarcerated scholars. Dwayne Taylor works as a licensed security officer. He was granted a sentence reduction in 2021 by Judge Andrea Hertzfeld, who I think may be here today. Judge Hertzfeld, if you're here, please stand. Tyrone Walker is Director of Reentry Services for Georgetown's Prisons and Justice Initiative. He is studying toward a bachelor's degree in political science. All of these men are now giving back to their community through education and mentorship. They're making DC proud. Let's give them a round of applause. We have one more second chance recipient here who I want to honor. Robert Richardson, would you please stand? Mr. Richardson received clemency in 2018 from the governor of Louisiana, thanks to the advocacy of his wife, Sybil Fox Richardson. Fox, would you please stand as well? Let's give them a round of applause. I want to honor all of our participants who have earned and received second chances. The people in this room are living proof that granting second chances makes our society and our communities stronger, safer, and more just. Thank you to all of our honorees and their advocates for showing us the power of second chances. We have an outstanding room full of people today. If you look to your left or look to your right, you're looking at somebody who believes in second chances. We are honored to have with us today judges who have changed lives by granting second chances. We have U.S. attorneys in the room who have supported second chances in many different forms. We have defense attorneys here who have fought for second chances for their clients. We have family members, community leaders, and advocates who have made second chances possible for their loved ones and their neighbors. None of this would be possible without the incredibly dedicated clemency team at the White House. They are working hard to uplift and expand second chances through clemency, and I'm grateful to have some of them here today. I also want to recognize the outstanding team in the Department of Justice who is working hard to make clemency happen every day. This tireless and compassionate group of people is 100% committed to second chances, and I'm proud to call them my colleagues. I also want to note that the Associate Attorney General, Vanita Gupta, asked me to send her regards to everyone in this room. She is a strong supporter of clemency, and she wishes she could be here today. It has been so uplifting to see all of you here in the Department of Justice to celebrate second chances. Second chances require a group effort. We can't make them happen alone. I look forward to working with everyone in this room to create more opportunities for second chances. Thank you so much for being here today.